You already know what a gorilla looks like. You've seen them in nature documentaries, behind thick glass at the zoo, in photographs where they sit peacefully in misty mountains, gazing at the camera with something that looks almost like wisdom. You think you understand them. Gentle giants, noble, passive, the quiet philosophers of the animal kingdom. That reputation is one of the most dangerous misconceptions in all of nature. Because here is what most people are never told. Gorillas are not the peaceful vegetarians popular culture decided they were. They are the largest living primates on Earth, built with a physical architecture so extreme that biomechanical engineers still struggle to fully quantify it, capable of violence so sudden and so total that the few humans who have survived encounters describe it less as an attack and more as a natural disaster that happened to have a face. The image you carry in your head of a gorilla, calm, contemplative, beating its chest for show, was built by decades of wildlife filmmaking that needed a gentle giant, and carefully selected the footage to give you one. What the cameras didn't linger on is what we need to talk about. To understand the gorilla, you first have to understand what it is. There are two species, the eastern gorilla and the western gorilla, each divided further into subspecies. The mountain gorilla, the eastern lowland gorilla, the western lowland gorilla, and the cross river gorilla. Combined, fewer than 110,000 remain in the wild. The mountain gorilla, the one most people picture, numbers fewer than 1,100 individuals. It is one of the most endangered animals on Earth. But endangered does not mean diminished, and gentle does not mean safe. Gorillas live in the dense forests and volcanic mountains of Central Africa. Groups, called troops, are led by a single dominant male known as a silverback, named for the distinctive saddle of silver hair that develops across the back of mature males. A silverback is not simply the largest gorilla in the group. He is the group. He makes every significant decision: where to travel, when to eat, how to respond to threats. His authority is total, and maintaining that authority in an environment where rival males exist requires the capacity for overwhelming, immediate, and sometimes lethal force. This is the ecological context in which the gorilla evolved, not peace, not tranquility. A world where the ability to project and deliver catastrophic violence is the price of survival. Start with the body, because the body is where this story begins. A male silverback gorilla stands between 1.4 and 1.8 meters tall when upright. He weighs between 140 and 220 kilograms. By the raw numbers, that is already 2 to 3 times the mass of an average adult human male. But mass alone does not capture what a silverback is. Studies attempting to measure gorilla strength have produced figures that biomechanics researchers describe with visible discomfort. A silverback gorilla is estimated to be capable of lifting or throwing objects weighing up to 800 kilograms. Their grip strength is measured not in the units we use for humans, but in units typically reserved for hydraulic machinery. They have been documented tearing apart hardwood trees with their hands, not breaking branches, tearing the trunk, as a display behavior, as a demonstration, as something they do when they want you to know what they could do to you. Their arms are longer than their legs. The arm span of a large silverback can exceed 2.6 meters. When they move on all fours, knuckle walking, the posture you see most often, they cover ground with a speed and smoothness that does not look like it should be possible for an animal of that size. When they charge upright or on all fours, they reach speeds approaching 40 kilometers per hour. You cannot outrun a gorilla. This is not a metaphor. It is physics. Their canine teeth in adult males can exceed 5 centimeters in length, longer than the canines of most lions, built not for predation because gorillas are almost entirely herbivorous, but for combat, for threat displays. And when threat displays fail, for the kind of damage that sends a message to every other gorilla in the surrounding forest about what a silverback is willing to do. The chest beat, The behavior most associated with gorillas in the popular imagination is not aggression. It is a warning. It is the gorilla choosing, at that specific moment, to give you a chance to leave. The sound carries up to a kilometer through dense forest. It is designed to be heard by things that are not present. It is a broadcast, a declaration of what is here and what it is capable of. When a gorilla stops warning you and starts moving toward you, the warning phase is over. Documented encounters between gorillas and humans occupy a specific and disturbing category of medical and wildlife records. In April 1986, a 5-year-old boy named Levon Merritt fell approximately 5 meters into the gorilla enclosure at the Jersey Zoo in the United Kingdom. He landed unconscious on concrete in front of a group of western lowland gorillas. What happened next was captured on film by visitors and has been analyzed by researchers ever since. The dominant silverback, a gorilla named Jambo, positioned himself between the unconscious child and the other gorillas. He stood there. He patted the child gently when the boy began to regain consciousness. He held the other gorillas back. This story is told frequently. It is held up as proof of gorilla gentleness, gorilla empathy, gorilla kindness toward humans. It is proof of something more complicated and something far more unsettling. What Jambo demonstrated was control, perfect, deliberate behavioral control over a situation that could have ended in seconds. He assessed the threat level of an unconscious human child, determined it was non-threatening, and managed the situation accordingly, including managing the other gorillas who were moving toward the child. Before Jambo stopped them, he stopped them. With presence alone, this is not a gentle animal that happened to be kind. This is an animal with such complete social authority, such total physical dominance over its environment, that it can decide in real time what lives and what doesn't. And on that day, it decided the child lived. The same capacity for decision exists in the other direction. In 2012, a silverback at the Dallas Zoo named Patrick repeatedly charged at zoo visitors through the glass barrier. He had a documented history of behavioral issues, aggression toward other gorillas, destruction of enclosure infrastructure, and a pattern of targeted intimidation toward human visitors. Zoo staff described him as unpredictable. He was eventually transferred to a different facility. Patrick never hurt anyone. The glass held. But what primatologists noted was that his charges were not random. He selected targets. He returned to specific individuals. He remembered faces. Gorillas remember faces. They track individuals across time. They have demonstrated in multiple research settings the ability to recognize specific humans after years of separation, responding differently to familiar keepers than to strangers, adjusting behavior based on individual history. A gorilla that has decided it does not like you is a gorilla that remembers it does not like you every time it sees you again. In the wild, human-gorilla conflict follows a pattern that conservation researchers have been documenting with growing alarm. As forest habitat in the Democratic Republic of Congo, Rwanda, and Uganda continues to shrink, degraded by agricultural expansion, charcoal production, and ongoing armed conflict in some of the most geopolitically unstable terrain on Earth, gorilla ranges and human settlements are colliding with increasing frequency. The encounters that result are not the peaceful wildlife tourism experiences that conservation organizations photograph. They are confrontations between displaced, stressed, resource-pressured animals and farming communities with no infrastructure for dealing with them. Silverbacks raiding crop fields, maize, banana plantations, sugarcane are not uncommon in the border zones around protected forests. And a silverback raiding crops is not a shy, retreating animal testing the edges of human space. It is a 200-kilogram primate that has already decided the food is worth the risk and has the physical capacity to enforce that decision against anything it encounters. Farmers who attempt to drive off raiding gorillas have been injured, not frequently, but the injuries that do occur tend to require medical attention that the communities experiencing them often cannot easily access. The remote terrain, the limited infrastructure, the distance from hospitals, these are not incidental details. They are part of the same story of encroachment that is pushing humans and gorillas into the same diminishing space. What researchers note consistently is the nature of gorilla aggression in these contexts. When a silverback charges, and the charge is not a bluff, the attack is fast, targeted, and over quickly. This is not the prolonged, frenzied assault of an animal in panic. It is a controlled, calculated, maximum force intervention by an animal that has made a decision. The decision, when it happens, takes approximately 2 seconds to execute. The social architecture that governs gorilla life is, in its own way, as unsettling as the physical one. A silverback's authority over his troop is absolute, but it is not permanent. Younger males, called blackbacks, grow toward maturity. Rival silverbacks exist in adjacent ranges, and the transition of power, when it comes, is rarely administrative. Male gorillas live as solitaries after leaving their birth group, sometimes for years, before acquiring females and forming their own troop. This acquisition is not passive. It requires confronting established silverbacks, displaying, threatening, and sometimes fighting. Gorilla combat between adult males produces injuries that field researchers describe in language typically reserved for industrial accidents. Broken bones, deep lacerations from canine teeth, injuries that, without the immune systems and pain tolerance of an animal built for exactly this, would be fatal. Sometimes they are fatal. When a new silverback takes over a troop, through the death or displacement of the previous dominant male, something happens that researchers first documented in the 1970s and have observed consistently since: infanticide. A silverback who acquires a new troop and finds females nursing infants kills those infants. Not all males do this, not in all circumstances. But it has been documented often enough across enough populations to be considered a reproductive strategy, rather than an aberration. The logic from an evolutionary standpoint is precise. Infants carrying another male's genes represent a biological cost with no genetic benefit. Their removal causes the females to return to reproductive availability faster. The new male's genes propagate sooner. The gorilla is not making a moral calculation. It is executing a biological program shaped by millions of years of selection pressure. But the precision of that execution, the fact that it targets infants specifically, that it is linked to the acquisition of new troop membership, that it is a strategy, not a tantrum, reveals an intelligence directing the violence. The same intelligence that remembers faces, that manages group behavior with a glance, that decides in a zoo enclosure whether a small unconscious human is a threat or not. What we have done to the gorilla as a species over the last century is a separate category of disturbing. Western lowland gorilla populations have declined by more than 60% over the last 20 to 25 years. The primary drivers are habitat loss, commercial bushmeat hunting, and disease. Gorillas are susceptible to virtually every respiratory illness that affects humans. The biological proximity that makes them so useful as research subjects also makes them vulnerable to the common cold, to influenza, and to Ebola, which has killed more gorillas in Central Africa over the last 3 decades than most people know. A single Ebola outbreak in 2002 and 2003 is estimated to have killed more than 5,000 gorillas in the Lossi Sanctuary in the Republic of Congo alone. The animals die quickly. They die in family groups. They die in the same places they have always lived. The mountain gorilla is the one exception, the one gorilla population that is actually growing. From a low of approximately 620 individuals in the 1980s, careful conservation work across Rwanda, Uganda, and the Democratic Republic of Congo has brought the population to just over 1,000. It is considered one of conservation's genuine success stories. But 1,000 animals. In a region with ongoing armed conflict. In a forest that is surrounded on every side by one of the most densely populated areas of sub-Saharan Africa. The margin is not comfortable. There are approximately 100,000 western lowland gorillas remaining in the wild. Estimates vary, because the forests they inhabit are vast, dense, and in some cases actively dangerous for researchers to access. Consider what lives in those forests, an animal that is, pound for pound, the strongest primate that has ever existed, that leads its social group with an authority so total that a glance from 50 meters away can stop another animal in its tracks. That charges at 40 kilometers an hour, that can tear apart a hardwood tree. That holds grudges, that remembers faces, that makes decisions, calculated, deliberate, purposeful decisions about when to display, when to retreat, and when to close the distance completely. And now consider that this animal is being slowly, systematically pushed out of the space it has occupied for millions of years, into smaller fragments of forest, into increasing contact with humans, under resource pressure, under stress. A gorilla under pressure is not a different animal from a gorilla at ease. It is the same animal, with fewer options and the same capacity. Here is the hardest thing to hold in your mind, all at once. The gorilla is not cruel. It is not malicious. It does not want conflict with humans. The evidence for this is substantial and consistent. Given space, given stability, given the forest it evolved in, it is, by the standards of large apex-capable primates, remarkably restrained. But restrained is not the same as safe, and the conditions that produce restraint, space, stability, resources, distance, are precisely the conditions we are systematically removing. What remain when you strip those away is 200 kilograms of muscle and decision-making that has been tested by millions of years of exactly this kind of pressure. And it passed the test every time.